Well, as you probably guessed, grades are simply a tool, which means grades have embedded within them a worldview, a way of understanding the world. And when we use grades, we have to adopt that worldview that changes our top-down thinking and changes the world you are perceiving and living in. Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's From Theory to Practice, where I take a look at the research so you don't have to. Now, as you know, we're taking a journey through my new book, 10 Things Schools Get Wrong and How We Can Get Them Right. And this week we're going to take a look at Chapter 3, which is entitled Grades, the Problem with Modern Assessment. Now, as you can expect, this is a huge topic, so rather than tackle it head on in this video, I want to hit it from the side and see if we can come at it from kind of a side angle. So the article I've selected this week is called Can Language Restructure Cognition? By Majid and colleagues. Now, to understand this paper, we have to go back to the very foundations of the brain and how it works. Now, for the longest time, we used to think the brain worked in what's called a bottom-up manner. Essentially, the world is out there, signals come into our body through all of our senses, activate the brain, and that's our experience of reality. We now know that's not true. The human brain, by and large, works on what's called a top-down system. Essentially, this is where parts of the brain can feed back and change how those signals from the world interact with and activate the brain up here. So as a simple example, let's just take a look at this simple image. Some of you right now are seeing a nice, pretty young lady, and some of you are seeing a more run-down, older woman. Now, regardless of what you're seeing, what I want you to do is flip. Change now and see the other image. If you're looking at the old woman, see the young woman. If you're looking at the young woman, see the old woman. Now, as you know, this image isn't changing in any way, shape, or form. The signals coming in and activating your brain are identical right now as they were 10 seconds ago. But you can see two different things. That's the power of top-down processing. You can push back and dictate how your brain reacts to those signals. Now, this leads to a very important question. What drives our top-down control? What's guiding this thing to change how all of the rest of the brain works? The easiest way to conceptualize it is it's your world view. The stories you use to make sense of the world changes your top-down processing, changes the world you're perceiving and living in. So as you can assume, our worldview comes from a dozen different sources, from our parents, from our family, our friends, our experiences, our schooling, the things we learn. But there's one major influence on our worldview, on our top-down understanding of the world, that most people miss. They don't think of it. And it's our tools. Every tool we choose to use comes embedded with its own worldview. And when we use those tools, we assume and must then also use that worldview. And that's what this paper takes a look at. This paper says, okay, language is one of our most basic tools. And if tools have an ability to change our worldview, can language change our perception, our memory, our cognition, and the world we are living in? And to see where these researchers arrived, I want to play a quick memory game with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a picture of a table, and there will be three objects that can be placed on that table: a house, a doll, and a tree. Now, the most you're ever going to see at any one time is only two objects. So I'm going to show you a series of pictures, and what I want you to do is try and memorize the location of each of the objects on the table as they sit. So let's start. So here we've got our table, and we've got the house, and we've got the doll. So I want you to memorize their positions. Now in picture 2, we have the same house from the previous picture, but we have a new object, a tree. So I want you to try and memorize the position of these two objects as they stand. Picture 3, all we see is the doll. I want you to imagine that I gave you that tree object. Now here's the question. Using our memories from the last two images, where on this table does the tree belong? So again, putting all the images together now in our mind, where on this table would you place it in relation to this doll? Now I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna guess you put the tree here. Congratulations, not a very difficult game. You've got a wonderful memory, great job. But check this out, when we play the same exact game with members of the Aboriginal tribes from Northern Australia and Aboriginal tribes from Mexico, they place the tree here. Now why might that be? It turns out this difference has to do with language. In English, most of our languages for space concerns relative location. It's to my left, it's in front of me, it's to the right of that thing over there. Whereas in Northern Aboriginal and some Mexican languages, space is always absolute. It's always tied to the cardinal points of north, east, south, and west. So whereas I might say, uh-oh, there's a scorpion in front of your foot, They would say, there's a scorpion south of your foot. Nothing is relative, everything is absolute. So why would that impact their placement of the tree? Well, let's go back to our images. As you can see, I kept rotating that table between different images. Now, us as English speakers who think in relative terms, we rotated our body with that table as well. So when we saw picture 1, we imagined ourselves in front of the table, and we swung with the table when we moved to picture 2, and swung back when we moved to picture 3, which means the tree was always going to be to the left of the doll. Now, in absolute languages, there is no spatial relativity, so they don't swing between images. So in absolute terms, the house is south of the doll, the tree is south of the house, therefore the tree has to be south of the doll. Now remember, this wasn't a perceptual game, this was a memory game, which means the tool of language can literally change our memory for events and how things unfold. And it works with movement as well. So let's say I put you at a table facing this direction and I moved a little toy car down then towards you. Once I flip that table to the other direction and I say move the car the same way I just moved it, most of you will move it to your left then towards you. But when we play this same game with absolute speakers, because the car first moved south and then east, once we flip the table, they will move the car south and then east. This is the power of our tools to change, to interact with, to influence our top-down perceptions of the world. So let's bring this back. What does this mean for us as teachers? Well, first, this means all of our students are going to have unique worldviews. And a lot of the times when we clash with our students, we assume, oh, they're not trying hard enough, or oh, they're not putting in the effort. When in actuality, no, they might not be seeing, understanding, smelling, tasting, perceiving the same world we are. Which means one of the essential things we have to do is form relationships with our students. We have to know their stories, their worldviews, how they're experiencing the world, because in those worldviews are going to be the clues we need to understand how they're thinking and how we can bring them to that next level. And beyond individual students, we now have to think, okay, what is the worldview of our school at large? What are the stories we're using to define our purpose, to drive and guide our kids? Those global worldviews we're using to organize our school days and our pedagogy are also dictating how we're defining and understanding student learning, growth, and development. So what are the stories we're using collectively, and how is that influencing our interaction with students? But let's bring it back now. So remember, we're talking about chapter 3 of the book, Grades and Modern Assessment. So what does any of what we've just discussed have to do with grades? Well, as you probably guessed, grades are simply a tool, which means grades have embedded within them a worldview, a way of understanding the world. And when we use grades, we have to adopt that worldview that changes our top-down thinking, and that changes the world we live in. So what is the worldview of grades? What is the story hidden within grades? Well, that's what we take a look at in chapter 3 of the book. So now that you kind of have the framework, now that chapter will help you dig deeper into the concept of grades and see what is this really doing, and is this really what we want. So thank you all so much for hanging out with me. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and comment below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Bye, y'all.